I've been running games now for a long time, and weirdly enough, I find myself almost going back in time, running adventures and modules from before I was even born. Classic fantasy is my favourite genre, and I find that a lot of these older modules really grasp the vibe and the theme that I'm interested in running. That's not the only reason though, and that's what I want to talk more about in this video today. Make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy my videos and want to see this channel grow. Thanks. Obviously, there are lots of people telling you to run your own homebrew settings and design your adventures and worlds and stories. And whilst I think you should definitely do that if you've got the time, I wouldn't be doing my due diligence if I didn't tell you about how valuable it is to actually run modules and pre-written adventures at your tables. I personally stay away from anything that Wizards of the Coast has been involved with, so I look more at TSR and other third-party modules and adventures like the Barra Maze, because I think that's the type of content that I'm interested in, and I think WotC, these days is producing that more like modern approach to fantasy, which is very counteractive to what I like. But when it comes to classic modules like the Keep on the Borderlands, the Lost City, the Veiled Society, and Horror on the Hill, to name a few, there is one major thing that they all have in common beyond being written for Mystara, the known world, and that is that they are, in themselves, simple adventures. There is nothing backbreaking about them, and some people say that's like the biggest flaw about them, is that they're simple, that there isn't too much depth to them. And you look at like modern modules like the Tyranny of Dragons, which takes place from level 1 to 15, with Horde of the Dragon Queen and the Rise of Tiamat, which are the two kind of major adventure stories that you can follow. And whilst that sounds great, how many groups actually finish it? I've heard some other D&D channels talking about adventure paths, and the concept is that that a player character's career involves a number of adventures that form a story path for them and their group that takes them from a low level, assumedly, to a high level. The players can dictate where their characters go, and the Dungeon Master can choose or run the story that makes the most sense. These adventures can be related to each other and to the overall setting or the central tension, but they don't have to, and I think that's what makes it very interesting. Especially somebody with ADHD, I like variation, I like doing different things in different places, very kind of Conan the Barbarian, right, where he's all over the place doing things for all these different kingdoms and city-states. I have been for the last couple of years now, working my way through the original adventures that, are basically classic D&D. And I'm currently running Horror on the Hill for my group, for my Shadow Dark group that I run every Sunday. And I think it's been going pretty good. They're not making as much progress as I think other groups potentially do that play it. But then again, I have added more content to the module, and I don't really think there's a lot of pressure on the players to actually be quick or do things at an expedient rate. And what I will say is a good thing about Shadow Dark, like quite a few other more kind of OSR and classic ttrpgs, is that experience points are gained by acquiring treasure. And because the party hasn't found a lot of treasure so far, they haven't really been delving into any dungeons or doing anything of the sort. They haven't really been acquiring a lot of experience, which means that they're not like out-leveling the zone or the adventure, not having to change too much about the monsters, which is nice because it allows me to keep that challenge there and that excitement there too. The content provided in the books is, pretty shallow, as I previously specified about, classic adventures in general, but it's enough for you to build upon, which I think is what we as dungeon masters should be practicing a lot more. It's creating a statue from a block of stone or a castle out of sand. You know, right now my players are just mainly exploring the wilderness, that is the hill, the wooded hillside, which, you know, the horror on the hill takes place, and they're learning about the various monstrous factions that are a part of the adventure. And it's been good. As I've previously said, you know, I've developed the narrative further by expanding the main settlement, and I've used my book designing hex towns to basically accomplish that. I've actually updated the book a couple of weeks ago. I'm working on another new version at the moment as well. I'm trying to really make this book as good as it could be. But, you know, it's really nice to be able to use the book to kind of make this settlement go from being very little to actually something that my players can sink their teeth into. I've also created some charts and tables that I use for exploration and survival scenarios. Like, my players can get lost, they can find forage goods, berries, things like that. They can come across quicksand, all sorts of hazards, dangers, threats, and, if I'm being honest, just things that they can discover as well, which is pretty fucking cool. And that's one thing I like about these modules, is that they are really easy to drag and drop wherever you want and adapt to your needs and the needs of your players. You know, I'm running a homebrewed version of the Grand Duchy of Karamikos from Vistara, and the cool thing about it is that the Grand Duchy is where a lot of the original modules are located. Pretty much all the ones I specified earlier, you know, the Keep on the Borderlands, Horror on the Hill, the Veiled Society. I think there's quite a few other ones as well that are just kind of in that area, so it's a really good space for it. I have expanded the region. I've added a couple of new baronies. I've added some other interesting biomes as well. I just didn't really like the fact that, you know, 80% of the map was forest. And whilst that's realistic, especially in like certain countries in the medieval times, like Eastern Europe, which I think is what the Karamikos is kind of based off. It's based off like Macedonia, Greece, that kind of area, you know. I wanted it to have a little bit more variation, so that's exactly what I've done. I also want to bring a large greenskin threat to the area, which, you know, I can do by just dragging and dropping another module or another adventure into the area. Obviously, there's the Broken Lands in Mystara, which is where like a lot of greenskins, orcs, all that sort basically live and rule. And I like the idea of having some sort of story like that closer to Karamikos. Obviously, they already deal with like bugbears, orcs, goblins, hobgoblins, etc. But I want that to be more of like a universal threat, similar to how like in Game of Thrones there was like the King Beyond the Wall, right? A Mance Raider. I just think that sounds pretty sweet. And then I can maybe use the Caves of Chaos as a staging ground for an invasion. You know, who knows, man? It could be quite cool. Either way, my plan over the next few years is to just run all of the kind of classic modules and post reviews on the channel, like I've done with the Keep on the Borderlands and the Baramaze so far. So make sure you check those reviews out if you haven't already. They're on my channel. They're some of my more popular videos, and I go into extensive detail talking about how you can actually run it for your tables as well. I'd love to know what you guys think about running classic adventures and just modules in general, whether you like to kind of drag and drop things in. It is definitely something that I recommend to newer dungeon masters especially, but I even think for more experienced DMs, there's nothing wrong with you taking something that somebody else has made and making it your own for your players. I think that should genuinely be encouraged. And it's quite nice too, because then your players can turn around, you can turn around and say, well, I've run these modules, these well-known famous modules. It's almost like ticking it off your list, your D&D adventure bucket list. and you can still run your own sandbox stuff. I don't really look at sandbox gaming as a style of game anymore. I see it more as like an ethos that I will always sandbox no matter what I'm doing. I will always allow for opportunities to sandbox. So I can run a module or an adventure and still have a lot of sandbox opportunity for my players, even though in a way there is some sort of plot string, there is some sort of, I don't want to use the word railroad, but there's a path that the party is kind of following. There is still so much room for that to change and for those sandbox opportunities to reveal themselves. Anyway, make sure you guys join my Discord if you want to get involved in my community and join our monthly events, and consider signing up to my Patreon, either as a free or paid member, if you want to gain access to charts, tables, and all that other stuff to level up your games. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys next time on Loki's Lair. Until then.